Hi there. Today I want to broach a subject which is very dear to my heart, even though it's very controversial. And the topic is failure. And I want to show to you how failure is actually the best way to learn and is the best way to build your capacity for transformation. So stay tuned. So my story goes like this. Essentially, when was made redundant in the year 2001 and 2002, and these were mass redundancies, um, I was thrown in what would be a journey of self-discovery. What did I want to do? The market was all down. I had specialized in telecoms as a marketeer and in consumer marketing, and I just thought, what am I going to do? Ironically, that was a time when I also experienced my first real terrible grief because my inspiration, which was my grandmother, passed at the same time. But something happened inside me and triggered this mindset of, you know what? I should do this. I should follow my dreams. I should try and set up my own business. Something I'd never considered, by the way, before. Before this, I was a corporate animal. My ambition was to be the next CEO of Procter& and Gamble or Unilever, one of these big companies. So I was really derailed. I was thrown off track. So when I created that business, which was a bespoke accessories business, so I and designers I had working with me, and I had amazing designers, would design jewelry and handbags, all made to order. And I actually took out, crazily, a shop in Mayfair in London. Now, for those who don't know Mayfair, it's quite expensive. So it was a very, very, very big risk. So when I did this, I was very aware that it was high risk. I was very aware that it could go the wrong way, but I just thought it will never happen to me because I've always been a straight A student. I got a distinction in my master's. I went into a graduate training program out of 2,500 delegates or potential participants. 8 were selected. I was one of those 8. An overachiever. Failure wasn't gonna touch me, or so I thought. When I actually opened the business, I took on the store, and unfortunately, the business wasn't doing well. Even though it was a great business, the overheads were way too high for the revenue it was bringing in. And I went through this whole terrible journey, and this is for another video, where I had to survive the enormous stress of understanding that your business is about to go under. And I became depressive. I actually would burst into tears when people would speak to me. So not a good thing when you're supposed to be inspirational and you have a team of people supporting you who are looking up to you for guidance. So I had to fight with myself in order to make sure that the business somehow moved forward. As time went on, however, it became quite clear that the business wasn't making what it needed to make in order to survive, basic maths, and ultimately I had to what's called declare it voluntarily insolvent, which essentially means you don't have enough money coming in to cover your outgoings. And I had to close it. And I remember that point. At that point, I was thinking there was always a stigma, there was always a badge of dishonor, of a badge of shame associated with the notion of failure. I was shocked, and I couldn't believe that this has happened to me, or this had happened to me. And when it did ultimately happen, initially, of course, there's a relief because you at least know that you don't have all those enormous debts to cover at that very point. And you can breathe a little bit. what I did I will cover that on a separate video. But what I realized is the stigma that I held with failure or around failure is one that is quite prolific within society and within the business world. And nobody really talks about what happens when your business does go under. There are no real support groups. You get put onto a creditor, a company that deals with creditors, the people that you owe money to, and they are supposed to help you turn it around. Essentially, they just take everything that you've got that's of worth, try and pay the people who you owe money to, but there's no support for individuals like myself, who as an entrepreneur had to experience the most horrible of experiences, which is when you lose absolutely everything that you've worked so hard for. So the business was wonderful. The clients were super happy, but it's just not enough revenue coming in. And the point about this video is right now, if you ask me, Christina, would you ever do it again? No, I wouldn't do it again. But do you regret doing it? I don't regret it, because failure has set me up for what I am doing now. This experience taught me what I am most passionate about, has shown me my strengths, has also shown me my capability and my capacity for resilience that I was not aware of before. I had been made redundant twice before, but that was a walk in the park compared to losing everything. And the reason why I'm sharing this is because we're in the midst of a pandemic. We're in probably the most challenging time for over a century, other than the world wars that Europe was in, where we are all collectively involved in either our businesses going under, or we're losing money, or we just can't make ends meet. And the reason why I want to talk about that is because the first thing that we're going to do, that you're going to do, is you'll do what I did, which is essentially say, how did I let this happen to me? How am I going to come out of this? Because you're in shock. But by the same token, what failure does, and this is where I want to kind of end on, is the capacity to say, you know what? This is really a horrible moment, but there's only one way I'm going to get out of this. And that is through working on me and transforming my mindset. I now appreciate those who have gone through failure. In fact, people tell me that when I share this story with them, that they are inspired by someone who has gone from absolutely nothing to come back again and to really rebuild against the odds. Because if you remember, this was in 2007 I lost my business. Then we had the financial crisis, Lehman Brothers went bust, etc. in 2008. And then there's been a whole bunch of crises, and of course we're now in the COVID-19 crisis. So you could imagine this has been a very, very difficult time to rebuild and reconquer. And this is exactly what I've done. And I'm hoping that by me sharing my story, we can all start thinking about failure in a slightly different mindset. Failure is the opportunity to do something more intelligently in the future. And that's exactly what I did. So what I learned from failure, from my business failure, was the overheads. So the business was very expensive because I had a shop, I had a lot of expenses. So the overheads were high. What did I then do? I set up a virtual business. Everything is in the cloud, and we don't have overheads. Why? Because we always wanted to be ready for what happens when things go wrong again. So I became extremely smart in how I managed the cost basis by which I was working under. And secondly, the other big thing is it really taught me what I'm all about. And I'm doing it today. I'm here imparting knowledge. I'm here inspiring you with my story, because the learnings that I got out of that failure, and this is the transformational mindset, that I'm very passionate about. And that's the only mindset that's going to get us out of COVID-19 is we have to look back and we have to say, yeah, sure, it didn't work. Let's take the learnings from that and then move on. So these are my parting words to you now. Let's think about that. If we're going through really challenging times at the moment, if you feel like your business, and a lot of retail businesses are probably going to have to close their shutters for good, if you're at that point, this is an opportunity to now think about what would you do differently in the future. If you've lost your business, there are ways to come back. If you've lost your job, there are ways to come back. You're looking at someone who did this many times over. So stay tuned, please. Leave me your comments, leave me your thoughts, because I want to make sure that the messages I'm imparting to you are adding value to where you are today, but also I want to know how you feel about the notion of failure. And you know what? Let's embrace it. I'm hoping that you might embrace it and say, it's just, something that I had to go through, and I'm proud of having experienced this. It'll teach me a lot. Mind you, it's going to be tough, but you will get through it because you're looking at someone who did just that. So I leave you with these thoughts. I'm hoping that things continue to go well with you, but please stay tuned for more content on the subject. But at the same time, please give me a few comments, feedback, anything that you want to know more, and I'm happy to cover those. See you next time.